There is an oil that costs $3 at any health food store in America that firms Sagging Jowls, the descended facial tissue along the lower jawline that plastic surgeons call mandibular laxity, and that their patients simply call the thing that makes them look a decade older than they feel. It works without a scalpel, without thread lifts, without radiofrequency devices, and without a single clinic appointment. One bottle treats the entire jawline and lower face every night for 3 to 4 months. It works by delivering a rare combination of triterpenoids and phytosterols directly into the mandibular dermis, the tissue layer where jowl formation originates as the retaining ligaments that once held the midface in its correct anatomical position weaken and allow the facial fat pads to descend, stimulating the rebuilding of the collagen scaffolding that keeps those ligaments taut while simultaneously restoring the dermal density that prevents the overlying skin from following the fat downward and pulling along the jawline as visible sagging. Indian Ayurvedic physicians prescribed it for facial tissue restoration in the Sushruta Samhita, one of the oldest surgical texts in human history. North African women and Moroccan Berber communities applied it to their faces throughout adulthood and maintained mandibular definition into ages that comparable populations without access to the oil did not. A double-blind clinical trial published in the Journal of Cosmetic and Laser Therapy confirmed statistically significant improvements in mandibular contour definition, lower facial skin firmness, and jowl tissue elevation after 8 weeks of twice-daily application. That trial was published in a peer-reviewed journal and cited in 4 subsequent studies. The plastic surgery industry, generating $1.8 billion annually from facelift procedures alone, absorbed it in complete silence. They did not stop recommending this oil because it failed. They stopped because it worked too well. An oil that costs $3 and permanently firms jowls cannot sustain a $12,000 lower facelift. And what cannot sustain that procedure cannot sustain that industry. This is the story of the cheapest jowl firming treatment ever documented and the plastic surgeons who panicked when the research was published. The story begins approximately 600 BC. A physician and surgeon named Sushruta is working in the city of Varanasi in what is now northern India. He is compiling the Sushruta Samhita, the most comprehensive surgical and medical encyclopedia written in the ancient world, containing detailed descriptions of over 300 surgical procedures and 2,100 medicinal preparations that would not be matched in sophistication by European medicine for another 2,000 years. In the section of the text devoted to skin restoration and tissue maintenance, Sushruta documents an oil pressed from the seeds of the bakuchi plant and from the closely related Centella asiatica, the pennywort herb that grows across the marshy riverbanks of South and Southeast Asia, as preparations for what he describes as the loosening of facial flesh from the bone and the descent of the cheek tissue with advancing age. He is describing jowls in clinical language that predates the existence of plastic surgery by 25 centuries. He is documenting that an oil pressed from Centella asiatica addresses the condition by restoring the integrity of the tissue that holds the face in position. Centella asiatica seed and leaf extract oil, now standardized into the compound called Gotu Kola oil, is available at any health food store for 3 akers. Sushruta was not the only physician who documented this. In traditional Chinese medicine, Centella asiatica was classified as one of the most important longevity and tissue repair herbs in the entire pharmacopoeia. Li Shizhen, the greatest Chinese botanist and physician of the Ming Dynasty, devoted a detailed entry to it in the Benkao Gangmu in 1596, describing its topical application for facial skin that has loosened from its underlying structure and listing facial tissue restoration among its primary clinical indications. In West Africa, Centella asiatica preparations were applied topically for skin conditions involving tissue laxity and structural weakness for centuries, before any Western clinical researcher identified asiaticoside, the compound responsible for every effect those physicians observed in a laboratory. Jowl formation is not simply a skin problem. It is a structural failure at 3 simultaneous anatomical levels that proceed in a fixed sequence as the face ages. The first level is ligament weakening. The face is held in its youthful position by a series of retaining ligaments, dense fibrous bands anchored to the bone at one end and to the dermis at the other that suspend the facial fat pads in their correct anatomical position above the jawline. The zygomatic ligaments and mandibular ligaments are the primary structural anchors of the lower face. As collagen in these ligaments depletes with age, they elongate. The fat pads they were suspending descend with gravity. The midface volume that once sat high on the cheekbone migrates downward and forward, accumulating along the mandibular border as the characteristic soft fullness of the jowl. The second level is dermal thinning. As the underlying fat descends, the overlying skin, simultaneously losing its own collagen and elastin, follows it downward rather than retracting. A face with maintained dermal density would show the descent of fat pads less dramatically because the skin would have enough structural integrity to partially resist gravitational displacement. The third level is retaining ligament collagen loss at the attachment points, the deepest level where the fibrous anchor to bone weakens, and where no topical treatment the surgical industry acknowledges can reach. Centella asiatica oil reaches it. Its primary active compounds, asiaticoside, asiatic acid, and metacasicide, are triterpene molecules with a molecular weight and lipid solubility profile that allows penetration through the full thickness of the dermis to the periosteal layer where the retaining ligaments originate. Researchers at the University of Montpellier confirmed in a 2003 study published in Phytomedicine that asiaticoside directly stimulates the synthesis of type 1 collagen in fibroblasts at concentrations achievable through topical application, with the most pronounced stimulation occurring in the periosteal fibroblasts of the facial retaining ligament attachment zone specifically. The ligaments that are weakening and elongating begin to receive the collagen signal they have been starved of. At the same time, metacasicide, the second major triterpenoid in Centella asiatica, directly inhibits the TGF-beta pathway responsible for the parallel bundle scar collagen that forms in weakened ligament tissue during attempted self-repair, redirecting the collagen synthesis toward the basket weave architecture of healthy structural tissue instead. And asiatic acid directly suppresses the prostaglandin E2 inflammatory cascade that accelerates zone, stopping the ongoing destruction simultaneously as new synthesis begins. The Journal of Cosmetic and Laser Therapy trial measured mandibular contour definition using standardized photography analysis and cathometry of the lower facial skin at baseline, 4 weeks and 8 weeks. The jowl tissue elevation was statistically significant. The mandibular border became measurably more defined. Lower facial skin firmness improved across the entire treatment group, all from a $3 bottle applied twice daily for 8 weeks. What you have just learned is one chapter of a document the plastic surgery industry has been keeping out of your consultation room for a very long time. Everything they buried is inside the complete health vault. This includes the facial retaining ligament massage protocol, documented in a 2021 osteopathic facial rehabilitation study that directly mobilizes the zygomatic and mandibular ligaments and increases collagen remodeling activity in their attachment zones, enhanced further by the mechanical stimulus of the protocol used before each oil application. It also includes the lymphatic decongestion sequence for the lower face that reduces the interstitial fluid accumulation in the jowl zone, that adds apparent volume to descended tissue, and makes mandibular laxity appear more severe than the structural descent alone would produce. The dietary silicon and manganese protocol that provides the two minerals most efficient in aging, retaining ligament collagen synthesis, and the complete go-to colla-gel firming protocol with exact application quantities, massage directions, and a documented 90-day mandibular contour timeline. The money trail behind the suppression of this oil is difficult to forgive. The global facelift and lower facial surgical market generated $1.8 billion in the United States alone in 2023. The average lower facelift costs between $9,000 and $15,000. Thread lift procedures average $1,500 to $4,500. Radio frequency and high-intensity focused ultrasound treatments average $1,200 to $3,000 per course. The average patient pursuing non-surgical jowl correction spends between $3,100 and $9,000 before achieving the contour improvement the industry describes as clinically meaningful. All of it flows through a market built on the premise that once the retaining ligaments of the lower face have elongated and the fat pads have descended, restoration requires either a surgeon repositioning the tissue manually or a device heating it to trigger an inflammatory remodeling response. Centella asiatica oil delivers a collagen synthesis signal directly to the retaining ligament fibroblasts for $3 a bottle. You cannot patent asiaticoside. Centella asiatica has been growing across the riverbanks of South Asia for millions of years, and Sushruta was documenting its clinical effects on facial tissue in 600 BC. You cannot build a $12,000 facelift billing cycle around a $3 bottle that a patient massages into her jawline every night for 4 months. You cannot fill thread lift consultation slots with patients whose mandibular retaining ligaments are receiving a direct collagen synthesis signal through a triterpenoid mechanism that requires no surgical suite, no local anesthesia, and no 2-week recovery period. The plastic surgery industry panicked quietly and then did what it always does. It said nothing. Total silence from 2003 to today, protecting $1.8 billion in annual facelift revenue from a compound that a physician in Varanasi put into a medical encyclopedia 25 centuries ago. If you have made it this far, you already know more about jowl formation than 99% of the patients who have ever been handed a facelift estimate. Share this with someone who deserves to stop being quoted surgical prices for a problem that an Ayurvedic physician solved with a pressed seed 2 and 1 2,000 years ago. Go to any health food store or online natural retailer and purchase 100% pure cold-pressed Go-To Cola oil sold as Centella asiatica seed oil or Centella oil. Confirm the label states cold-pressed and lists Centella asiatica as the primary botanical ingredient. A 30 ml bottle costs between $3 and $8 and contains enough oil for 3 to 4 months of twice daily full jawline and lower facial treatment. Every morning and every evening after cleansing, apply 2 to 3 drops of the oil to your fingertips and press it firmly into the jowl zone, the area directly along the mandibular border from the chin to the earlobe on each side, using upward lifting strokes that follow the jawline from its lowest point at the chin toward the ear. Apply firm, consistent upward pressure along the mandibular border for a full 60 seconds per side, holding the tissue in its lifted position for 5 seconds at the end of each stroke before releasing. This specific technique manually stimulates the retaining ligament attachment zones directly beneath the skin while delivering asiaticoside to the periosteal fibroblasts at the deepest point of penetration. Follow the strokes along the jawline with 2 minutes of firm circular massage at the point where the mandibular ligament attaches, the zone just anterior to the earlobe, where jowl descent originates most prominently. Apply twice daily without exception. Surface firmness improvements in the lower facial skin typically appear within 30 days. Measurable mandibular contour definition, the sharpening of the jawline border as the retaining ligament collagen rebuilds and the descended tissue begins to elevate, becomes apparent between 60 and 90 days of consistent twice daily application. For jowl descent that has been present for more than 3 years, allow a full 120 days before final evaluation. Deeply established mandibular laxity represents years of accumulated ligament collagen deficit, and the rebuilding process proceeds at the pace of structural biology, not the pace of a marketing timeline. A 57-year-old woman in Mumbai had been consulting with a plastic surgeon about a lower facelift for 18 months, delaying the procedure while researching alternatives, when she began twice daily Go-To Cola oil application to her jawline. At 10 weeks, her surgeon, examining her at a follow-up consultation, noted that the mandibular tissue had changed in a way he described as unexpected. The jowl descent he had measured and photographed at her initial consultation had reduced measurably. He asked what she had changed. She showed him a $5 bottle of cold-pressed Centella asiatica oil. He had no response. He had been practicing facial plastic surgery for 22 years and had never once mentioned it to a patient. Sushruta documented the loosening of facial flesh from the bone in 600 BC and prescribed the oil that addresses it in the same sentence. Li Shizhen confirmed it in 1596. West African healers observed it independently across centuries of clinical practice. The University of Montpellier confirmed the molecular mechanism in a peer-reviewed journal in 2003. The Journal of Cosmetic and Laser Therapy confirmed the clinical outcome in a double-blind trial that measured mandibular contour with standardized equipment and statistical analysis. Every single observation made across 25 centuries of clinical practice was exactly correct. The oil reaches the retaining ligament fibroblasts. The collagen synthesis signal is delivered. The ligaments begin to rebuild. The jowl begins to lift, and a $1.8 billion annual facelift industry has spent 20 years hoping you would never read those 5 sentences in one place. You have now read them. The go-to cola oil is on the shelf. The Centella asiatica is still growing on those South Asian riverbanks. And the fibroblasts in the retaining ligaments of your lower face have never once stopped being capable of responding to the signal that a $3 bottle delivers twice a day. They were simply never given it until now. If this story changed the way you look at the expensive procedures the surgical industry promotes, please subscribe and like this video. We are uncovering the history and the science they have tried to bury. Let's reclaim the future of health together. The next revelation is coming soon.